Okay. Okay. Do you want to go ahead?
I'm Peter Steinhardt. I live about 150 feet from the project.
Okay. And what's your thoughts on the project?
I really don't like it.
Okay. And do you want to say a little bit why?
Well, there are two levels at which I find objection to it. First is that it is the property was slated and is still slated in the comprehensive plan for multiple family housing. I think that is the most crucial issue in Palo Alto, that we are increasingly becoming one economic class. When I grew up here. I've lived in this community for 70 years. I've seen a lot of changes. A lot of it's good and a lot of it's not so good. But when I moved into my present home, I had neighbors who were landscape gardeners and policemen and things like that. Those people can't live in this town anymore. And what we have is increasingly a city in which the people who work here show up in the morning and leave at night, and the other people don't show up. I mean, the other people are here, and it's, it strikes me as like Johannesburg in the past, where all the people work in, arrive on trains in the morning and leave, and it's not really a community; it's more of a compound. And I think that changes our community. It leaves it with less a sense of community. You have less diversity. That's my first objection. I still want to see that property go into multiple family housing. My dream of dreams would be a project for teachers employed by the Palo Alto Schools.
Sure.
Really have a hard time.
Yeah.
The second thing, though, is as a person who lives in the neighborhood, I live as a neighbor of the applicant, and I have been only mildly annoyed at the imposition that all the trucks and all the parties cause. But this application is kiting that up enormously. And we're talking about 500 students a day, if it all works out. We're talking about 50 people using community spaces. And I presume those are office spaces, essentially. These are people who bring in startups and are trying to have a place where they can work, where they can have their children. Enviable thing, a good thing to have. But this is another, how much traffic, how much parking issue we have now. In addition, we're going to have exercise room, we're going to have a cafeteria, we're going to have food service. The thing that really alarms me is the events schedule here. They're saying they want up to 250 events with up to 75 people, plus up to 100 events with up to 300 people and an unlisted number of events up to 400 people. That is just more than the traffic will bear. I mean, it's fine if we get 5 or 6 of these parties a year on the street where we have to drive around the trucks and things like that. But these events are going to be just out of control. Part of what I'm worried about, we're going to have another boot up in the neighborhood because they're going to be renting out space to groups. They're asking for outdoor outside sound. That would be just devastating, I would think. And to be able to control these events is going to be something. They did do an event after the city council meeting where they had, when we got home at night, there were 11 buses parked on the streets with their engines running. People who were there at the outset said it was just chaos. Kids trying to get around all these trucks.
Which event was this?
Sorry, yeah, what if?
Probably on the 13th.
Yeah, it was recently.
Yeah,
Was
kids
it the
trying
House
to weave in and out of all these trucks that are double parked on the streets and crossing across.
I don't know if it was the Channing House event, but there was an event at the applicant's home.
On the 13th?
It was at the applicant's home, but they
I
used.
see. Sorry,
was
I
at
thought
the
you were
applicant's
talking about
home.
the property.
Was at the applicant's
Oh,
home.
I don't
not the
think
funeral
so.
home. Not the funeral home? Or-
Not at.
No, it was at the applicant's home.
Oh,
On
applicants.
the,
But
on the
all
13th?
the
Are you
trucks
sure?
and buses were
Absolutely.
staging out of the parking lot and on the street. When we came home, there were 11 buses
Is that possible?
with lights on, engines running, starting to ferry people out. But we weren't there for the start. But people were complaining about in the past when they bus people in, the buses would sit out in front of their houses for 3 hours with their engines running. They'll have to ask them to move because they're choking on the tunes. I don't know how you can do this and manage this without enormous impacts on the immediate neighbors. So, to me, having all those events on this list is just kind of terrifying. It just gives up our neighborhood to people who are coming from the outside. We have no parking in the neighborhood at all. No park. There's no parking on one side of Addison because it's a flagpole park, 7 to 7. Every other space on the street is a 2-hour parking downtown residential zone, and those are so heavily used now. My driveway is blocked at least once a week by a parent trying to drop off a kid at Addison or coming for a parent-teacher conference, or somebody trying to make an appointment at one of the doctor's offices on the street parking space. And yeah, there's just no place to put those cars in the day for this. So I just look at this as being a sacrifice in the neighborhood for a purpose which may be a very noble purpose, but really it belongs somewhere else.
Okay. Thank you for explaining. Please, want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi. I'm Hillary Liros. I live on West Crescent Drive in Palo Alto. I am here in favor of the project because while I understand what the gentleman has said and his concerns, I believe, having been a resident of Palo Alto, not quite as long as the gentleman has, that there are ways around the issues that he has discussed. And I also think that perhaps if the space were turned into the residential property that you're advocating, that may in fact create other problems and challenges that need to be circumvented. Such as the fact that more people are living in the area also creates increased traffic, and also while my children go to private school, one of the reasons why is because I believe that the public schools are already impacted by the people who do live here. And while you're absolutely right, some people do come and work during the day and leave. There are some people like myself who spend most of the day in Palo Alto and have to get around within Palo Alto. So I observe the traffic that you've mentioned. I'm not denying that it exists, but I also believe that there are benefits that would be derived from the project that the applicant is advocating that outweigh the downsides of the project. As a working mom who has run a law firm from my home for the past 14 years and raised my children in the home and needing to find a place for them when the kids don't have school, I would have loved to have had a place like the one that's being recommended to take my kids where they can have activities and I can conduct meetings. I don't have that right now. It would be, I wouldn't say cost prohibitive, but it would certainly impact the rates that I'm able to charge my clients for the work that I do. The applicant is advocating and is proposing a space that is going to benefit the community in ways that we are lacking right now, unfortunately, unless we want to go over to the JCC. And at the moment, even though I'm Jewish, I don't want to go someplace where a lot of Jews are going to be congregating because of the inherent risks due to the increase in anti-Semitism. I would much rather go to a place that's non-denominational, where we as members of a community can come together. I think, we live in some pretty dark times where people tend to be more polarized than united. And if there's a place within our community where we can espouse the values that I believe are very altruistic and ones that I think are going to lead us to a next phase in our community, broadly speaking, that's certainly something to be taken seriously in all the positive ways. I remember when I had young kids, like Conrad's age, maybe a little bit older, I used to read to my kids. I still read to my kids. The books are a little sophisticated now, but one of our favorite books was Sun Tzu. I don't know if you're familiar with the stories on Tzu. And the message of the story is that it was a community that was pretty polarized. Everybody was doing their own thing and everybody was staying behind their doors and not really coming together. And without retelling the story, because many of you may be familiar with it, the message of the story is that when we all come together and we all contribute, even if it's a little begrudging at the beginning, at the end the result of everybody contributing and everybody, kind of stretching a little bit and bending a little bit is that, that result is going to be greater than the sum of its parts, which I believe this project would be. Yes, there are problems, there are concerns, there are things that need to be thought through, and challenges that are valid and need to be surmounted solutions and workarounds. I am not denying that any of those exist because I'm not a hypocrite. I see the traffic. I know about the parties. I'm at many of them. And so I know what that can do and how that can really tax a neighborhood. I get that. But the applicant is aware of them. She doesn't have her head in the sand. And I believe that she's a problem solver. She's very pragmatic. And I know because she's aware of the concerns that the neighborhood has raised, she would be very motivated to coming up with proactive, effective solutions to those problems, while at the same time giving the community something that I think it actually really could benefit from and could use. And as a working mom, and I believe you are as well, you would really appreciate having something like that around. So thank you for the chance to share my view. I am in firm support of this project, and I really hope that it happens.
Okay, great.
Hi, my name is Lauren Williams. I am a resident of Palo Alto. I have 2 children who attend Addison Elementary, and I'm a member of the PTA board. Full disclosure, I don't live in the immediate area. I actually live the end of Waverly, but I do spend quite a bit of time in and around the Addison neighborhood because my children are there and because of my involvement in the school. And my focus primarily is just on the logistical issues that this project like this would cause in such close proximity to our school, specifically as it relates to school hours. And then even more critical, I feel, are during the hour drop-off pickups. Our drop-off starts at 7:45 in the morning, and usually that winds down at about 8:30. Pickup starts as early as 2 and lingers until about 3:15 in the afternoon. And if you have spent any time in and around Essen during those hours, not just this year with the project, but in years prior, it's sort of the equivalent of a game of Frogger. If you look pretty young, I don't know if you remember that game or if you're familiar with that game, but that's pretty much what drop-off and pickup is in that neighborhood. As a family, we ride our bikes, so we are trying to not be part of the traffic congestion because we know there are many families that need to, especially working families that have to do car drop-off and pickups. But remove this project from the situation. It's a very congested area anyways. Last year or the year before, we had even had someone from the city traffic department come out and observe drop off to see the buses whizzing by on Middlefield that go from one side that cross over Addison and pull right in front of the school, just to observe how many near misses we have on any given day. Then we add a project like this, not only during construction, but also during operation. And as I understand it, the operating hours would be would be synced alongside of our drop-off times. And I just see it as a really bad situation waiting to happen, whether it be an injury or a fatality. It's just, there's no way around it. You can't expand the street there. You can't mandate that cars come off the street. And my understanding is our principal has had a discussion with the applicant regarding adjusting operating hours, and it appeared as that was not a flexible point because of the sort of the clientele that the business would be looking to cater to during those times. In addition to that, as far as ongoing, I will also say that as someone who's frequently in the neighborhood during the logistics and the staging of many of the events that happen either at the site where the project is being proposed or at the applicant's home. And in those times, mostly I'm in the car because it's while my children are at school and I'm, going by the school, but also doing other things. It's painful. I mean, it's very frequently I'm stopped on Addison Avenue having to go around. It's dangerous for me as someone driving because not all of it's not common that someone's out there directing people around the cars and the trucks that are double parked. We also have had in our school, in the parking that's available around our school during drop-off and pickups, the number of vehicles that are parked there as events are being prepared for or events are being taken down, which then eats up more space for the community that is in need of that during those critical hours. Even as recently as Friday, when I was at school, I can see that the applicant is becoming more responsible and more aware of the impact of the staging and the preparations for the events, and that the vehicles were parked in for an event that's taking place at her residence. There was 3 large trucks that were parked in the parking lot of the funeral home site today. And as I was picking up one child from soccer practice, dropping another child off for a play performance, I thought to myself, okay, well, if those 3 trucks are needed to set up for an event at that site, where are all the other cars of people who are going to, the people who are actually are at the site to do, whether taking advantage of the office space or the children activities, like where are those trucks going to go? Because my understanding is all those parking spaces are for people that are actually going to be using the corner house. So while I feel like it's a great idea and it's something, it sounds like, the community, many in the community would really rally around and can take advantage of, I feel like, similar to your comments, it's just, this isn't the right place. It's already a congested area. There is over 400 kids moving in and out of that school every single day. And to put that community at further risk beyond what we already have with the traffic, I feel is just irresponsible. And I would invite you to come by Addison on any morning during those hours and observe it yourself. It's quite it's quite a scene.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing your perspective. Okay, please go ahead.
Thanks. My name is Marcy Lamb. I live at 595 Lincoln. So it's 1 block away from both the applicant's residence and the project. And I've lived there for 15 years and have been in the area for off and on for 30, I guess. So my concerns are that in the last 10 years, the traffic has become substantially worse. And so what Lauren was talking about, the school has had to remedy it by really forcing and telling all kinds of inconveniences to families. Because my kids used to go to school there. And so this families of Addison have already been inconvenienced because they have been told, you're not allowed to drop your kids off with a car. We need you to walk, we need you to drive. We need you to walk, we need you to bike, we need you to carpool, we need you to do lots of things. And that was a plan that's been put into place, would you say, in the last 10 years? Mm-hmm. So that plan has been put into place to respond to a problem that has arisen due to, as the residential parking program has been. That didn't happen 10 years ago or 15 years ago. That happened now, addressing a problem that exists. And that problem isn't getting better.
Sure.
And the residential parking isn't really fixing it. It's just sort of keeping it at bay. Excuse me. And it's just like containing the problem that we already have. And bringing any additional cars that are going to be coming and going and parking on public space is just, it just is not feasible for this neighborhood that we all know is already very dense. And there's nothing wrong with density in housing. I don't have a problem with density in housing, but this is a residential area. And if you're gonna have anything there, it should be housing, or it should be relieving the traffic congestion, not adding to it. And all you have to do any day of the week at 7, 8, 9, 10 in the morning, any given day, just drive by and see how many cars are parked there on the street. Mm-hmm. And and then you can say, okay, where's the next 5 cars gonna go? Where are the 10 after that gonna go? And the 20 after that? There's nowhere for them to go. And it would be absolutely unfair for people coming into the neighborhood to be buying residential permits off of somebody that, is essentially taking those residential permits away from other people who live here. So that wouldn't be acceptable. So my primary concern is the traffic that we already have and not contributing to it, and the road congestion. So that's parking. I'm talking about traffic. I'm strictly talking about parking right there. But then you talk about actually moving cars. I'm on my bike all the time. I bike to work so that I don't have to contribute to the parking problem, right? I work downtown and I bike or walk. And so I'm on my bike all the time and I'm looking at what the cars are doing and traffic's doing and what the students are doing, because I bike up and down Addison. And so I bike there during drop-off. I drive go up there during pickup, which I'm going to actually say pickup goes till 6 o'clock because the Addison Kids Club, which is the after-school kids club group, families are coming and going and kids are biking. And again, they're not driving very much because they've been told not to. So people are there with big, I don't know what those things are called, but
Box
big,
Box bikes.
box bikes. Thank you. Big box bikes with multiple kids in them, with or without helmets on. And those are biking in the bike lane because that's a bike lane street. It's not like a parking in the bike lane street. That's a bike lane street. And so, people are driving and encouraging their kids to be healthy and fit and walk and exercise and bike. The other day, I took a photo of this. The other day, I'm biking home from work, and there was an event going on at the applicant's house. There's 2 security guards standing in the sidewalk to the driveway, waiting for guests who are walking up from the funeral home. And all the focus is on the guests coming up from the funeral home, and I'm watching 2 little kids on bicycles that are on the sidewalk and their parents in the road. And they're coming home from school, and it's 5:45, 6 o'clock, and they just gotten out of after school care at 6 o'clock. And they're on the sidewalk biking their little bicycles up. And the 2 security guards that are kind of, I'd say they're about 30 years old, and they're standing in the sidewalk, and they don't move. So the kids on their little bicycles go down into the driveway of the applicant's driveway, out into the street, around the parked cars that are parked there, out into the road, around 2 cars, and then on the next driveway, in the next person's house, they come up out on the sidewalk, and then they continue on their way home at 6 o'clock at night. It's just not sensitive, and it's just, okay, so that isn't their job to be sensitive to kids on bikes, and you could make the argument that a 5-year-old kid should be biking out on the road like all the other bikers, but in practice, we all want our little kids to be biking on the sidewalks. So that's better than driving, So that's one, I witnessed that firsthand, and I took, I was clicking pictures of what was going on at the time because I just thought that was bad. Then I get down to the block where I'm turning to my house, and there's 2 trucks. The trucks are like zoom, zoom, in and out of the party, in and out of the party. The buses are in and out of the party.
What are these trucks doing? What are these trucks? What are the trucks?
Well, in this case, they were not, at the moment when I'm talking about, they were actually buses. But the trucks can be anything. There can be refrigeration units, catering units, they're decoration units, and the trucks idle in the street in front with, oftentimes security guards directing traffic around them, and sometimes not directing, but oftentimes with security guards directing them. But what that means is, as you're saying, is that, the trucks here are blocking 1 lane of traffic. They've got a security guard there. All that means is the traffic's blocked here waiting for them, and the traffic's blocked here waiting for the security guard to pass them around. You can't deny that it's a problem. It's irritation for locals, if nothing else. But then once the party was going on, the buses are pulling into the funeral home. In 2 minutes, I watched a bus, literally, I'm timing it, standing at the corner watching. In 2 minutes, a bus pulls in. I count 25 people get out. They walk to the bus, and within 2 minutes, they're back out on the road again. And there's cars backing up because the cars can't get through again. It's 6 o'clock at night. And I'm standing looking at all of this, and there's a woman with her son. They've got yellow bike vests on, and they're sitting in the corner, and they can't get across the street because the truck's blocking them, and they're just trying to get home from school. it's just too much. It's just too much activity, you know. And if it's, of course, us neighbors, it's once a year, you know, you overlook it, right? And
Oh, you're saying this parties are like once a year type thing?
They're not once a year.
no, they're not. No, I said as a neighbor, if it was a once a year event, if my next door neighbor did it and it was a once a year event, I would expect them to come and tell me you're going to be inconvenienced for a day. I'm going to set up for a day, and then we're going to have a party, and we're going to break down for a day, and I'm really sorry, you know. And I can't even invite you, but I'm really apologizing for the inconvenience this is going to be to your neighborhood. And of course, as neighbors, you're neighbors, and that's what you do. But this is not what's happening. So, you know, that's my primary issue is that. But my conscience tells me that my secondary concern, this is not truly a public neighborhood site. And I'm not comfortable with a private club on what either should be housing or a community property. And you can say it's community, but it's not community if you have to pay to get in. Lucy Stern is community. Anybody can go in and utilize it. Anybody can walk in. Right now, that property has had do not trespass signs for I don't know how long. The Addison Kids Club has asked if they could use the site to helping with their congestion, which caused all kinds of problems on the construction site. And the Addison Kids Club asked if they could, you know, rent it, use it, be affiliated, whatever, and they were told no. Anything that would actually alleviate congestion would be a great community use of the space. But something that is going to bring people in beyond the 2 or 3 blocks of our area and just bring more people there is not serving the neighborhood. It's serving the community, but it's not serving the neighborhood. And it's serving a community, but I'm saying, what community is that? If you have to pay, and if you don't pay, you don't get to belong. And that's not community to me. Community is Lucy Stern, Mitchell Park, Coverly, where you can walk in and maybe you're a little bit poor, you know, but maybe once a year you want to sign your kid up for a class, and you're going to save the money, and you're going to tell your kid, once a year I'm going to sign. I can sign you up for one class this year, and I'm going to let you take a theater class there once a year, you know. But you shouldn't have to be a member to be able to belong there. So.
Okay, great. Okay.
Are we allowed to ask questions?
Yeah, actually, that's the next part. Actually, before we do that, though, I wanted to give you a chance to respond to some of the comments you've heard. So, could you?
I don't want to say too much because I think that it would be more beneficial for us to put our frequently asked questions, frequent concerns kind of down in writing for everybody, which we've been working on. I think there is some misconceptions between parking and traffic and who this is serving, similar to the YMCA or the JCC. Those are membership fees. There's also classes open to the public the same way that our center would be. So I think that there's like a few misconceptions in everybody's understanding of the time open and how we would want to accommodate Addison and how we want to be inclusive of those students and parents, and how we want to alleviate traffic. But I think that's something that, excuse me, I'm just getting over a cold, something that we can continue to address. We've been working on a frequently asked questions. We want to get out to the neighbors and have some meetings with the neighbors on a more individual basis.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, so the whole point of this is, you know, at council meetings, it's very structured, right? It's kind of like people talk, and for the most part, council can't really respond. There's not much of a dialogue. So the point of this actually is to actually have a dialogue, right? So I wanted everyone just to kind of lay out kind of their perspective, and then yes, definitely, I would like this definitely have a Q&A format, right? This is not just a. I'm trying to foster some dialogue on this topic because I think it's important that we talk about it. So you said you had some questions.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is really a question or just an observation. I try in all things to be fair and balanced and listen to both sides and not just be totally skewed to one side or the other. Clearly, I have my view and my perspective, but also clearly I do not live on Addison or in that immediate area. I'm several blocks away. It seems to me though, as an observation that something needs to be done with this site. I also seem to think, and I know I'm not phrasing this in the form of a question, but it also seems to me that the issues and the concerns with the area have nothing to do right now with what that site is, but rather what's going on at the applicant's home, which is something that the applicant can address. It's something that the applicant can address in another way. But the recommendation has been to convert the site into high volume housing, which in and of itself, seems to me, would create more problems and more traffic and more parking problems. So I guess the question, which I'm finally getting to, and thank you for giving me the chance to lay this out, is if it's not going to be high occupancy housing, because I don't think it's going to be, what ideas as alternative would the group have in mind? And I'm not trying to put anybody in the defensive. I actually am curious what if it's not the corner house and it's not going to be high volume housing and it's not going to be paid parking, because that's kind of a ridiculous thing to use for that space. What would your preference be as an alternative?
So first, I'd like to say that the issues as it relates to the applicant and the issues that are going on in her home and the logistics, what that causes, again, speaking from the school community because I don't live in the immediate area, so, but I am there quite often. It's, I think from my perspective and others in the school community, is simply that what we feel is, and I think logically, we feel like it's going to happen is that all of this is now going to either be ×2 because the events are going to take place at the corner house and the applicant's home, or it's just going to shift the problem to the corner of Addison and Middlefield because all of the events are going to happen at the site, at the corner house. So I don't see it as we can fix the problem down the street and then that gives the green light for that. We hope, I would hope that the applicant through this process becomes more aware of the pain that some of what's happening is causing the neighborhood and remedies that immediately. But in addition to that, and that goes away, but moving the problem down the street isn't going to fix it either, because if the events are going to be of equivalent scale or even a notch down, we're still going to have all of these trucks, and based on the number of events that are included in the application, all of these trucks, again, it's going to be during working hours, so it's going to go while the kids are in and out of school, and so I don't see it as this can be fixed and then let's go forward with that, because that's certainly not going to alleviate the congestion that the corner house will bring, not only from the volume of people in and out, but also from deliveries and staging and things of that nature. I disagree with you that high occupancy housing, high density housing would cause so much traffic and added volume to the area that it would impact the school community in a negative way. We have Webster Woods, which is right across the street, and that's high density, affordable housing. And I mean, I don't see that as an impact to the school. There's a parking lot, there's residential parking in and around that area. Most of those, I would say all of those children come to Addison, so they're walking across the street. That actually gives a relief for not only the people that would live in that housing from an getting their children to school perspective, but also, again, taking more cars and even bikes off the road.
I think what Hillary was alluding to is if there's 60 units there, or 30 units there, that potentially could be like 60 working parents to and from their homes during peak hours. I think that's what you were alluding to.
But we have that at Webster Woods, and that's not a problem. That's not a pain point for the neighborhood.
It could provide housing to city officials who can't afford to live in Palo Alto. It can afford, housing there could provide housing for teachers that can't afford to live in Palo Alto. There could be people who, like me, bike downtown to go to work. It doesn't have to be people who are getting in a car and driving somewhere to go to work. You don't have to assume that is what they're doing. Many people in Palo Alto work out of their homes or work downtown or work somewhere where they can bike or use public transport.
And it seems to be a project at that site. We may not be talking about 60 units, maybe that it seems unlikely we can accommodate that kind of thing. But there can be off-street parking provided for a development there, and as Webster Wood did to some extent. And I would also like to point out here that when the charge that we're just talking about the parties, the applicant's house, we do have a history of this, of it not being very considerate of the neighbors. And where the use permit that they're seeking asks to be able to do this every other day at a higher level, higher impacts than what we've experienced so far. I think that if we look at that, what they are asking for at this time, it is just opening up this enormous Pandora's box of problems at the scale that they're talking
In fact, just based on the no parking signs in the neighborhood, I believe there's an event going on today or this evening. So I would encourage you to come and walk the neighborhood today and see what the staging looks like. I mean, I think a lot of the trucks have already come through the neighborhood, but just to see the people in and out, and then tomorrow, very likely, or school days, when everything is being removed, and how that impacts the neighborhood, and congestion related. I mean, I'm sure they're wonderful events. I'm sure that the people that attend them enjoy them. It's just, I think at the city council meeting, there was a gentleman who lived in the neighborhood that said it's 3 hours for the people who attend, but it's 3 days for the neighborhood for every single event. And if we're trying to do that every other day, or even just once a month, it's
So it takes 3 days to set up and tear down. Is that what you're saying? Right.
Day before, day of, day
I see.
after.
I see.
Not all the time,
And-
but yeah.
And part of that problem is that we presume those vendors that are coming in sometimes are not familiar with the neighborhood or anything like that, and they're having trouble finding the place. They're having trouble finding a place to park. We're going to have people who really aren't familiar with the traffic patterns and so on in and out there all the time. I should also point out that, I think that for a project like this, there probably are other sites that should be considered for this. Coverly is opening up. Maxim Art site is going to open up. There are a number of places where this kind of a project can go in without having an impact on a residential neighborhood.
So Freya, just from your perspective, you'd actually like to see some sort of project like this happen, but not necessarily in this location.
Well, and I wouldn't wish this on, the party aspect of this. I just don't wish on anybody. We've been living with this for years, and I'm far enough away that it's a mild annoyance. If this permit goes in as acting, it's like, do we move out?
How close
Yeah,
are you to?
I know, I feel the
150
same
feet.
way.
150. Okay.
Yeah, I'm around the corner. My husband and I talk about do we move out. Honestly, I mean, not being overly dramatic. It's just, it doesn't feel like a neighborhood. It feels like, I mean, if this isn't what we
bought into.
This is what we bought into.
I haven't read the application, so forgive me for not only sounding ignorant, but being ignorant. I will. Is the applicant proposing the every other day or maybe even every week events being of the caliber of the events that are being held at the home, or different?
No, it's not stipulating what those events would be. Presumably, many of them will be rent-out events, as we had at Boot Up, which is just in Menlo Park, which is just, the city has finally come down on them after years and years of complaints. They'd be raising money for the private club.
Wait. So what
So
happened in
if you want me to elaborate
Yes,
a little bit
'cause
just
I
on the
actually-
events, and he's right, we didn't stipulate in the application what the events were, but we mentioned like 2 Saturday morning birthday parties. Maybe there's like a pumpkin carving workshop for families in the afternoon. There's something like that's how we picture the weekends to go. This truly is a family oriented application.
And what about the comment, the point that was raised about needing to pay to participate? Are there no opportunities or no plans for there being free to the community things? Because that doesn't sound like something the applicant would do.
In the application and during our pre-screen, we addressed this a little bit, but we will more thoroughly go go through it moving forward. In the way that the YMCA or the JCC operate, there would be a membership fee that pays the bills. It keeps the lights on. And then that would potentially allow people to sign up for classes earlier or have some other sort of benefits. Then classes would also open to the public.
Right, okay. And
There would also be like discounts for people who live in the vicinity to encourage walking, just the same way that the other community centers operate for Palo Alto. And then there was a second point to your question.
I mean, is there an opportunity for there to be?
Yeah, so
lower
those who
costs or
demonstrate
scholarships
financial
or-
need will have applications waived.
My understanding of having read the application, they're talking about up to 500 people coming to classes a day, plus at any given time, 50 members using the community spaces for, as you say, the kind of thing you'd be really interested
Yeah.
in. Plus, they haven't talked about childcare, but those numbers would be in there as well. Staff of up to 28. The thing that then gets really alarming is on top of this, they say up to 200 events a year with up to 75 people, up to 150 events with 75 to 300 people, and an unstated number of events with up to 400 people. If you just look at that 250, that's every other day. And we'd be talking about trucks, caterers, people servicing the cafeteria, buses coming in and coming out, if not that many people. And then with all that come and go traffic during the day, I think they're estimating in the permit 150 people there coming in and out on an average day, which seems to me, if you're looking at these other figures, out of the question. But those people are all going to be just cruising around the neighborhood looking for parking spaces, distracted, weaving in and out of the catering trucks. And they're going to be children, and they're going to be old people from Channing House out in walkers on the street as well. And
Yeah, no, I appreciate
We also have we haven't mentioned, but there's also quite a few kids who live in Webster Woods that are going to be out. And I mean, you probably know more on the weekends than I do.
Yeah.
But they use Addison as their playground, so they're also
soccer games,
yeah,
little league
going in and
games,
out of the
little
street.
league practices. That playground is
Scouts.
used
Yeah.
till
Boy Scouts on
6-7 o'clock at night
evenings.
every day of the week. And weekends, I don't know if it still is, but it used to be adult leagues using the soccer fields, kicking the kids off the soccer fields.
Well, the thing is that right now Addison is its use is a little bit constrained because of the construction. But in a normal time with Addison fully functioning with no chain link up and everything. I mean, let's say a couple of years down the road when it's all up and running normally, it's a very active and highly utilized space. From all three, if not four sides. There's a lot of activity going on in and out, kids, adults, in and out. And it's not just between school hours, and it's not just Monday through Friday. And so to say that what we need is twice that much activity there, which is how I'm kind of viewing this. I mean, there's like 500 families at Addison, is that right? 500 kids?
There's about 500 kids. There's about 350 families.
Okay. 500 kids going in and out of Addison a day, plus their parents. And we could roughly say, maybe we're not doubling, but maybe we're nearly doubling it across the street. It's crazy. That's just crazy. It's not a sensible place to put it. And so again, my point is, if what was really truly happening is that the corner house was really fully being utilized as a empty space that the Addison community was utilizing, overflow space for Addison, because Addison is the smallest elementary school in the Palo Alto Unified. That's why they're doing all this building. That's why they're pushing it up. That's why they're inconveniencing all the neighbors right now with the construction to make it back to a 2-story building so that it can have more space for the kids to play, and because right now kids can't really play there. They're reducing 2 classrooms. Is that right?
Mhm.
They had accepted 2 extra classrooms at Addison because of the trying to accommodate the needs of the district. They've said, no, we don't have room for that. And on top of that, we don't have room for that. We need more space for the kids to play, so we're going to tear down this building and make it 2-story, and that's great. They're not doing that because they've got lots of room for the kids to play in, that they need to have more people moving in across the street. And this space is not alleviating that problem. It's adding to it. So I just don't think as a neighborhood you can say this is going to help the neighborhood. This is really going to hurt and impact the neighborhood.
I'm sort of curious, do you have any sense of what the Stanford general use permit is going to do to enrollment at Addison yet? Does anybody have any idea?
No, in fact, I just had an email from this morning from the Palo Alto PTA Council they're kicking off a study to look specifically into how the different neighborhoods and PAUSD as a whole will be impacted, because that's not something that's been closely looked at as part of that study. Yeah.
And part of it is because the Stanford application deferred all discussion of impact of impact on schools, saying that under the law they didn't need to address that in their EIS.
My understanding is they do not plan to build any schools.
And in fact, I read the EIS that they prepared, and it said there will be no additional school-age children as a result of increasing the population on campus of 5 by 5,000 graduate students and undergraduates. And
That's no.
That never happens.
and that can't be true.
Go to Escondido.
So, how long have you guys lived in this neighborhood? Have you guys lived here when that funeral home was operating?
Yeah,
You
I've
were
lived
there?
there 44 years.
Were you there as well? or not?
No, I don't. No, I wasn't.
You know, it closed 7 years ago.
What's that?
It closed 7 years ago.
Oh yeah, I was there then. Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It never. Your question is probably what kind of impact it had. Very little. It was.
No,
You wouldn't have noticed it.
Never knew it. There.
I've lived there long enough, and I bike. I used to bike, and I still walk a lot. I had this sense of familiarity with the place. Maybe once a week there would be a funeral in which parking had to go beyond their parking lot out into the neighborhood. They'd be there for 2 hours. They'd be somber and quiet, and they were gone. There were no catering trucks, no outdoor music, none of the stuff.
And go ahead. Sorry.
And that parking lot was so empty that until about 10 years ago, they allowed Addison parents to use it to drop off their kids.
That's what I was gonna
It was
say.
up until the time that Roller and Hapgood sold it to the larger corporation. The Addison community had use of that parking lot for drop off and pick up.
And people would hang out over there.
Yeah. But the only times that I would notice the impact is that occasionally there'd be a large funeral and there'd be parking down the street, not in front of our house or so on. It was nothing. And the only other thing is that once a week the truck would roll up with the caskets, and you could hear the truck idling while they offloaded.
Okay. And do you remember, or can you talk a little bit about your experience at that time?
Just exactly the same. I was probably relatively new to the area when maybe they were winding down. They closed 7 years ago.
I think it was 7. I think it was 7 years ago.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's within the last 10 at any rate.
Yeah. I mean, you wouldn't know they were there. That's all I can say. It never registered one way or the other for me. And I never thought it was a negative, certainly.
No,
Nice
in fact, up until 20 years ago, there was a Mormon church on the corner of Addison and Window that was far more impacted. And then Scientologists got a hold of it, and there was parking up and down Addison nonstop.
On Sundays or every day?
Hmm?
On Sundays or on
Every day. Oh no! I mean that their operations in that church just all around the clock. There were people there late at night doing things.
Whatever happened to it? Is it still like that, or?
Oh, no. As I understand it, it was a weird deal with, it was actually privately owned. And the guy managed not to have to pay taxes because it was a church. Well, the investors sold it for a huge profit, ultimately, in the end. And it's now single family housing. All that property that they had bought up several houses in the neighborhood. Mormon church had bought up houses, hoping to expand the church. And when they finally decided they couldn't do it all, they decided to move down to South Carolina.
Is that the one on the corner? Is it on the corner? Addison, is it right on the corner, that house? Or is it a different, I'm trying to figure out which house we're talking about. The Scientologist house.
Oh, well, no, it wasn't just the house on the corner of Addison Window would have been just part of it. I mean, there were like 5 houses on Window and 3 on Addison, and I think there's a flag lot or 2 back there that it was all developed into housing.
I think the business did close in 2013 or 15. I'm not positive that the funeral home closed. We did talk to the person who operated it before it was closed, and I didn't live in the neighborhood, so I don't have my firsthand experience. But she did say that they had services every single day. They just weren't always, they weren't huge funerals, but at least once a week they were wrapping around the block. But they did have services, memorial services. Casket viewings. They had celebrations of life every day in the parking lot, and it was 44 spaces at that time. They had 2 hearse parked in the middle, and they had the 2 big garages in the back. We're actually going to remove one of the garages to make for 55 spaces. Before they were just non-conforming. They didn't. They weren't ADA compliant. So in the new plan, there would be an increase of almost 25% parking.
So you're saying 55 spaces on the proposed plan and 27 employees?
No. I think in our application, we said that there would be about 8 full-time employees, and then that we wanted to have some flexible positions available at anywhere from potentially 8 to 10 for working mothers or students, or people who just want part-time work, even people maybe who are potentially retired, and that kind of thing.
When I added it up, I got 28.
And it might just be those ranges that was, I think, 8 to 10 and 8 to 10. So that's kind of what we envisioned, and we did go through like who we think would absolutely have to be there. We do want to have those flexible positions for potentially Stanford students or even high school students who want to work after school, or working mothers, and that kind of thing. So we have been playing with those kinds of positions. We would also just have a compensation plan for anybody who's taking public transportation.
The compensation?
A compensation plan for our employees to take public transportation. That's our general plan. I mean, we would love for people to be in walking distance, but for those who would need to drive or take transportation.
So we have about 4 minutes left, and it sounds like most of you guys are parents, right?
I'm grandparents.
Grandparents.
That counts.
But my kids went to Addison. My wife taught at Addison.
Oh wow.
for
Okay.
20 years.
My daughter had his wife as a teacher.
Oh wow. Jeez. Awesome. One thing I hear about a lot is, in fact, we just had a meeting. Was it last week or the week before, with Palo Alto Youth Council, right? Youth Council. So these are high school students from Poly, from Gunn, Cassaway, just the high schools in the area. And one of the things that a lot of the students talked about was the need for community space, right? Now these are high school students. Of course, it's targeted for maybe perhaps younger parents and kids. But what's your? I mean, it sounds like nobody here is really against the concept. Maybe the location, perhaps. The concept, maybe not. I'm not sure. But what's? I guess I'd just like to hear. There's a balance of everything. There's a balance of like. There's a need that people have talked about, and I don't know if I hear this a lot. So I'm not sure if you guys hear it a lot, but I hear a lot of families who are struggling to find childcare, struggling to balance work and parenting, and then I hear also about all the community impacts, the traffic and the parking issues and all that. And I guess I just wanted to with the last few minutes we have left, because I think everyone here is either a parent or grandparent or perhaps both, just how do we balance that as a city? Because I mean, there's these are community priorities. It's not like we're going to build a toxic waste site here. Right? It's not like that. It's like it's something to just trying to serve a need that I certainly heard about. And yet there's also these other impacts of the traffic, parking, and all that. How do we? Yeah. So I'd love to. You want to start first?
Well, that's why thank you so much for asking the question, because perhaps I asked it inarticulately. What I was wondering about is, I think we all agree that it would be really wonderful for there to be a place to solve some of the problems, even though I will fully acknowledge it may create some other problems. Addison is obviously very impacted and compacted in terms of the amount of free space. And it seems to me, to have a place where the Addison community and the larger community can congregate and get to know one another would actually be a benefit, because right now that's not happening. And so that's why I asked the question, what other ideas would there be? Because if there is that, the housing, which I don't think is something that the applicant is considering, even if it's that, hypothetically, that's not going to solve the problem of there not being enough community space. I don't think there's enough community space, period. And as I said, for security reasons, we're not spending time at the JCC currently, even though that is a community space with which I was very materially involved for a very long time. I would love to have a place to go with my kids that's not the Four Seasons Hotel up the street, because that's just not appropriate to just bring my kids there and hang out all the time. There's really no place for me to take them where they can take classes and get to know members of the community, because we would desperately love to be able to do that, but there isn't a place where that is a possibility. So yes, I speaking for my family, I know we would love it.
Well, I guess my question is not so much that, it's more about how do we balance the two, right? Because there's parking impacts, there's need for maybe services for working parents, right? And how do you? I think we've all been working parents, right? So,
I mean, I don't think this is a new problem.
no, it's not a new problem.
My wife worked.
Yeah.
I worked. Most of the people that I got to know at Addison 40
I mean, it's so
years
expensive
ago
here. Both parents
were in
really
the
have to
same
work.
boat
Yeah,
these people
yeah.
are.
I
It
think
may be
so.
tougher to make a living, and it's much tougher to live in this town
Yeah.
than it was then.
We used a lot of parks.
I was gonna say, we
We have 300, how many days a year sun. We use a lot of parks.
Right. And the community space that we have, I mean, Coverly is being reevaluated for better use there, better and higher use there. Lucy Stern, I mean, we're rebuilding the junior museum and zoo, and that will, I mean, probably for that's geared more towards younger children. But I mean, let's look at Lucy Stern. How can we utilize that better? We also have the Arts Center. We have the Rinconada Pool. Mitchell Park is a brand new facility. I mean, but these are spaces that I feel like when I'm there at those locations, they don't seem to be highly utilized outside of people renting space for major events. So how can the city recreation department look at the use of these facilities that we have today to gear them more towards the residents and working families and children's services and the youth council, high school age residents, to use that better rather than, Lucy Stern, I feel like once a month, twice a month, that entire facility is taken down for a wedding or another type of celebration. Let's look at prioritizing the space that we have rather than going out and building new space. I mean, and Coverly is a great opportunity for that.
And what about the building next to Heritage Park? That's going to be That's going to be undeveloped. That is actually really well situated to be. The thing. It's been empty
used to
for
be a
so
hospital
long.
or something.
Yeah, next to Heritage
the
Park.
History
No,
More towards Whole
yeah.
Foods.
the
You
big
mean the old
empty
clinic?
building near.
Yeah.
The old
The old
clinic
clinic,
building.
Yes.
That's the
That is, yeah.
that's supposed to be the history museum one day.
But I mean, that could be, if you were to develop that with some mixed use, space and make it really a community center. Because I mean, I think a lot of people complain. I'm sure you hear it a lot. A lot of people complain that there's not a lot to do downtown if you're not going to a bar or you're not going to a restaurant. And so it would be great to have some place for the youth council and that sort of thing to have during certain hours, and some, you know, they could have they could add on a room there. I mean, that's if they're going to develop it and draw plans for that building. You know, let's get a GoFundMe for that and add some extra space.
Is there space also at Eleanor Park? There's a lot of unutilized space.
Yeah, I mean,
there.
so I think one thing you have to keep in mind is that the city itself, right, only has land, right?
Mhm.
But you guys probably hear we're trying to raise some taxes because there's lack of dollars for infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
So it's and this is private property, right? This is not owned by the city right now, and so the city doesn't have direct control over this property because it's a private property. So, but what I was really trying to do is just trying to understand the bigger picture, right? In terms of because I think everyone generally agrees that community spaces are awesome, right? In general, but where they are, of course, is important as well, and just traffic and parking issues. So it's just like trying to figure out how we balance it, right? And this was just kind of more final comments type of thing. So I don't know if anyone has any other thoughts on this.
But I think it's a good thought. I mean,
Yeah.
I do think, you know, that while I'm leery of the sort of exclusivity of this particular proposal in terms of what it will provide for that, I am sympathetic to the issue that it's a lot more difficult for people to make a living with raising children today than it was when I was in there. And I'm, and I think some things that ease that are of benefit to this community. But again, I have the reservation that there's an exclusivity to this that I find a little discomforting.
Okay. Any other final thoughts?
Yeah, I think you raise a good point that this is in fact private property that the applicant is trying to propose converting into something that would benefit the community. Again, yes, there are drawbacks. Yes, there are concerns. Yes, there are worries. Yes, there are problems and challenges. Yes, all of them. However, I mean, the alternative is not what can you do with Lucy Stern or what can you do with Coverly, because it's not either or. The applicant wants to do something that the applicant believes is meaningful with that space. And so the alternative is not to put that someplace else because the applicant doesn't own the property over there. So the question becomes what to do with this space, and the applicant is making a proposal for what the applicant thinks would be beneficial to the community at large. And if there are concerns and challenges that need to be worked through and worked around and resolved, yeah, okay, sure, that's fine. I think the applicant is open to hearing that. But the alternative could be just leaving it the way it is, and that still keeps the problems where they are and doesn't provide any corresponding benefit to the community at all. Because I heard all of your valid concerns. Those still exist, and so I think that the solution would be to work those concerns into a plan that makes meaningful use of the space as opposed to just leaving it, where it is, because then no problems are proactively resolved.
Yeah. I mean, it's not an easy solution here, right? But the purpose of this is to have a discussion. So I want to say thank you everyone here for coming out
Thank you.
to
Thank you
talk
for
about
having
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this again, this discussion's on Facebook. So although it's only about 5 of us here, or 6 of us here, it's a way for other people to kind of get educated about the topic and to comment on it. So anyways, just thank you for everyone for taking some time.
Thank you, Conrad, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Very good.
That's right. I don't know.
It was a little loud maybe on the
I don't know if you have
recording.
any final words.
What?
No, any final words? No.
No.
Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you.
That's awesome. Okay, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for
Great.
coming out.
Thanks.
Hillary.
Laura.
Yes, Hillary. Yes.
Hi, I'm Lauren.
Thanks.
Okay.
Lauren.
I caught it in the last.
Yeah.
Is there